Chilling tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications.
But first, something from a dear friend.
Welcome to the Texas Swamp, friend. I sure am happy you stopped by. I've got something I want to tell you about. Come on inside, won't you? Oh, don't mind the wildlife. Kinda comes with the territory. Have a seat there, friend. I'll just be a second. Oh, that's better. I wanted to tell you about our podcast, Drew Blood's Dark Tales, hosted by me, Drew Blood. We're a weekly storytelling podcast where you'll hear hand-picked horror from our favorite authors, accompanied by a full audio production and performed by yours truly. We're headed into our second season now, and I'd love to have you aboard. So stay a while, friend, and I'd never send you home empty-handed. So I've got a story you're definitely going to want to hear before you go trudging back through the mire. So let's smoke 'em if you've got 'em, and drink those glasses to the bottom. From author Justin Pepe, I give you The Swamp. Oh, how the swamp stunk in the sticky, humid August night. That sweet reek of the endless purgatory in the marshlands. The shack where Brad Gum lived with his wife was lost in the middle. He let his toe dip into the black nebulous of the duckweed-plated water and watched as the ripples shimmied outward, catching the wide moonlight on their crests. The oppressive heat sweltered under the arms of Brad Gum, and he shifted on the dock as hot beads of sweat ran down his lower back into the band of his 3-day-old underwear. He looked out over the bayou through the vapors of humidity and lights of fireflies that winked as the stars above. A frog trilled from under the ramshackle dock made of rotten planks. Locusts sawed on from the pitch. Brad's jeans were ripped into capris above the ankle. Oh, how the swamp stunk this time of year. The axe, which was gnawed and splattered with orange dust, was leaning restfully on a soggy, moss-capped timber that was sunk in near the tall grass at the shore. Brad knew the swamp smell. He knew his floundering home in the swamp stunk, but he could not smell it. Brad was devoid of all sense of smell. His stink, the stink of others at the store in summer, and the mildew stench of his homeland, of the swamp, were all scentless steam in his hair-filled nostrils. The light of the orange ember smoldering at the end of his smoke, and the moon above was caught up in the silvery pools of the eyes of alligators staring, watching, lurking below him. They were invisible apart from this singular giveaway, and would have otherwise been lost to the backdrop as logs or clumps of dirty weed in the murk. But they, like he, were there, part of the night, part of the swamp, predatory and monstrous. His wife was upstairs in the bathtub, happier than he, as he watched the ripples evaporate into the gloom and blackness of the bayou mists. Perhaps, perhaps not. He could not find the capacity to care. He breathed in deep in a vain attempt to take in the odious bouquet of the marsh, but nothing came to him. Nothing more than breathing in the vapors over a boiling pot of water on the stove. The only light in the shabby dwelling came down in a warm shaft onto the dock from the cracked bathroom window on the second floor. Brad got up from the end of the dock as he heard the grinding of car tires coming along the long gravel driveway leading to his secluded bit of land in the wild swamp. He threw his smoke down from the dock into the water. It hit with a sound like a match dying under a faucet. Something jumped at this and splattered in a large waking wave into the black water. He pictured something with pale eyes and ribbed skin that a largemouth bass or a snake would eat upon making such a debut into the stinking surf. The headlights cut through the stifling summer mugginess in two long glowing poles before the police car. The car came to a slow rolling stop as Brad made his way to greet the officer.
"Evening, mister,"
said Brad. The officer stepped out of the car. All the windows were down because of the mug in the air.
"Evening, Brad,"
said the sheriff. "The missus home?"
"Aye,"
said Brad, spitting a large wad from his mouth.
"She be indisposed, in the tub. You need her? I'll fetch her."
"No need to worry her," said the sheriff. His expression hardened and he stepped closer to Brad. "But Brad, there've been some odd complaints from the neighbors down yonder." He pointed to the laundry's home a bit to the south. The policeman drew a pack of Lucky Strikes from his breast pocket and lit one with his, as Brad would assume it, fancy city lighter, which clacked and clanged as he flipped the lid open and closed. "Dumb bastards," Brad thought to himself.
"Complaints of what nature?"
Brad asked. "Something about a smell, Brad. Something about a smell like hell. Like a rotten animal. They say it was wafting down on them real bad and they want us to take a look around here," said the sheriff. "Matter of fact, your place is smelling awful ripe tonight."
"Swamp,"
said Brad as he fingered his mildew-ridden belly button. He sniffed the cheese that he pulled forth from the cavity with indifference, even as the sheriff let his hand casually rest on the revolver strapped to his hip.
"You got one of them permits now?"
Brad said before spitting again. It landed with a loud, wet splat on the rocks. "I don't. Not yet. Don't want to trouble you with it. But tell me true. There anything I need to know about in the swamp?" the sheriff asked, eyes reading Brad's rather vacant and simple face.
"Swamp always thinking this time of year. Shit, it might be a deer fell down a sinkhole. I can help you look in the morning, okay?"
he said. "Well, sure, that'd be just fine," said the sheriff, who turned back to his car but paused before taking a step. "Say, Brad, got any coffee on? I could sure use a cup on the graveyard shift, only if you please." Brad coughed up something large and gunky in his throat and held it in his mouth before discharging it into the gravel at his bare feet.
"Sure, I'm sure Missus got something for you."
Brad did an overly polite bow to the officer and bid him towards the porch. The timber plank stairs yelled in protest as the two ascended them, almost cutting out the shrill trill of the tree frogs and crickets. The screen door flapped open with a simple and misused week before clacking back into its lock as Brad and the officer entered the putrid residence. Water-stained walls, cabinets left open to expose the chipped china-like bone beneath a wound, plates and tins on the counters, two matching rough wood chairs with their arched backs pushed out from the small round table where the old coffee was left in metal mugs. The officer sniffed. Stink. Swamp. An old oil lantern hung from the ceiling from some old cable that was the sole source of light in the room. It rocked on the breeze from the open window and allowed its light to cast odd and sharp shadows around the room, giving all a distinctly purgatorial feel. The wallpaper, once painted with bright sunflowers, roosters, and diamond patterns, sagged on the walls like an ill-fitted dress on a woman, and was bunched and torn by water exposing the ribcage of timbering beneath. "Awful quiet, Brad. Thought you said Missus is upstairs," inquired the officer.
"Indeed she be. Coffee still?"
Brad inquired back. Matter of fact, think I might have a look upstairs?" asked the officer. Brad turned and poured himself a cup of old cold coffee, from the moldy pot. The officer quietly unsnapped the cover of his pistol.
Sure.
Shrugged Brad. The policeman made his way around through the narrow kitchen, avoiding the dirty walls for the earnest desire not to get the filth on himself. The banister to the stair was unsurprisingly cracked in the pillars and railing as he ascended the dirt-smeared steps. The pistol was lifted with a creak from the leather holster as the stained steps quaked beneath his boots. He knocked on the bathroom. No answer. He knocked again upon the door and entered. There, the maggot-ridden corpse of Mrs. Gum stared back. Holes where eyes had been, now just an eggy residue dribbled from the sockets. Skin blackening, lips pulled back around yeller teeth. An undefinable and dark liquid dripped from her mandible. She was mutilated in places. In her stomach cavity was a gutted hole revealing nothing but a dark pocket under her ribs. She was not the only, nor by appearances the oldest one left here. The officer's eyes scanned other bodies, reddened with fresh blood and blackened with old. Some missing teeth, others seemed chewed and sawed, a fest of gore. The stench, unmentionable other than it burned with purification. Roadkill left to decompose for months was the only comparable testament the officer could fathom. In the seconds the synapses of his mind had to fire the thought into consciousness. The bath mat caught his attention, as small things seem to do in such a crisis. Even the once floral pattern was almost unidentifiable under the smudge of liquid and tissues that stained it. He turned to the door, and Brad was there. He was stripped bare, showing the thick forest of fur that extended from the scruff of his chin to his loins. Brad was looking at Mrs. Gum in the tub.
Well, hon, they think a dang deer is making that stink. But by God, come morning, the police dogs ain't gonna ever find you in that damn stinking swamp.
That axe, orange with rust, still managed to flash in the light of the single hanging bulb of the bathroom. The axe knocked the bulb but did not break it, flashing strobes of shadow and light in dizzying arrays around the room. The freshest red blood flowed over the black stains of the old, and the chirps of crickets, frogs, and the lapping of swamp water took over the night. When more officers came, Brad's bathroom was as ordinary as yours the next morning. Clean and welcoming to the point one wouldn't mind using it, despite the rest of the house. All the while, the police searched the grounds around the home. Brad brewed fresh coffee for them from a clean pot, and no one noticed that the police car was missing. Only Brad knew now where the vehicle settled. Deep in the stinking swamp. You've been listening to The Swamp by Justin Pepe. A good reminder to tread lightly when you're off the beaten path. You never know what you're walking into when you're out here in the wilderness. Good thing about this podcast, though, you get all of the swamp and none of the stink. And not a single one of my listeners has ever been axe murdered. Not to my knowledge, at least. But then again, we're still only in Season 1. Thanks for stopping by, friend. And if you enjoyed this little taste of terror, I invite you to search for Drew Blood's Dark Tales on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you do your listening. And subscribe for longer episodes each and every week. So grab a drink for the road, friend, and watch your step on the way out. I expect you back in one piece, you hear? Until then, may the wind be at your back. May the road rise up to meet you. And thanks for listening, and I hope to see you again real soon. Adios, y'all.
The following program is a production of Chilling Entertainment and the creative team at Chilling Tales for Dark Nights, and a proud member of the Simply Scary Podcast Network. Visit simplyscarypodcast.com to learn more about this and our other weekly storytelling programs, and become a patron today to show your support and get instant access to our extensive archive of downloadable ad-free tales of terror. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the show.
The darkness has found you. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 21. I'm your host, Jason Hill, and I won't waste any time this week. We have come to the final stretch, Part 3 and the conclusion to Garden of Fiends by Mark Matthews. This one's the lengthiest chunk, so we shall waste no time. Remember, this is the final entry in a 3-part series. For the previous 2 entries, I refer you to episodes 19 and 20 for parts 1 and 2 of this, shall we say, rather sharply edged little yarn. Also, for the final time, much to the relief of many, I'm sure, this story dwells on the subject of heroin addiction and the culture surrounding it, sparing few, if any, of the related grisly details. But most of you already knew that. Shall we? Oh, and, real quick, you guys want to know what turns me on? What really gets me going? It's an utterly ridiculous question because, of course you do. Ad-free versions of this and all our other episodes, as well as hundreds of tales from our audio archives, dating back to the hot, sweaty days of 2012. Yeah, that really hits the old double H spot. And those 2 H's? They stand for Horror Hill, obviously. But also in there is Otis Resident Gigolo Gyrie, I feel like I'm a little on the burly side. And that man, he can make a minx purr. I've seen it. So this Valentine's Day, give yourself the gift of patronage. Visit simplyscarypodcast.com and click Patrons in the upper menu to sign up today to get instant access from our friends at Chilling Tales for Dark Nights. Thank you for your support. And now, without further ado, from author Mark Matthews, I give you Part 3 and the conclusion to Garden of Fiends. Chapter 8. Gregory Snyder. noise gets into a car, it changes the entire driving experience. The task of reducing the noise emitted by commercial vehicles is complicated. Not only are the mechano-acoustic aspects complex, but there are serious limitations arising from the cost of noise reduction in a very competitive industry. Everything needs to be modified without penalties in weight, cost, and space. The goal is to make the cabin as removed from outside influences as possible. Anything to stop the onslaught of outside noises and internal combustions. I had become an expert at this, at protecting the consumer's experience from such threats, and I had worked with the same team for nearly 18 years. But I couldn't stop the noises I let into my head that evening. The words vibrated from afar and beat inside my skull. The red peppers are his veins, the tomatoes his plump heart, and the sage his uncut hair. I had nothing to shut them off, nothing to fight them back. Under the next day's sun, Heather fixed the tomato plants. She tended to the peppers and gave care to her transplanted eggplant. All of the produce picked from the garden was a violation of something sacred, like a vandalized church with graffiti sprayed sacraments. She saw the footprints and could tell exactly where the intruder climbed the fence. Surest way to make them break in is to lock it up, she decided. From that moment on, we left the gates open. Why should we expect any different from Lorenzo? He's been disenfranchised, left behind. This is his land, not ours. And of course, he had drugs on him. Who wouldn't? Lorenzo was too scared to show his face, it seemed, for the days that followed were quiet. The sun grew hotter in the sky, and Lorenzo was just a worm, baking in the summer heat and withering on some other sidewalk, but not nearby. I kept driving Tara to NA meetings, but we no longer went by the garden afterwards. Instead, it was Taco Bell or Starbucks. Vanilla cap for me, black decaf for her. Conversation was fluid, lubricated by her sobriety. The tension was gone. She'd been working out, sleeping less, and smiling more. She kept busy watching all the movies that she never bothered to while getting high. The Hunger Games trilogy. Of course Katniss chose PETA. The Fault in Our Stars. I cried hard. And she started binge-watching Breaking Bad, but then stopped abruptly. I started to feel itchy. My whole life revolved around this new clarity in her voice, this new shine in her pupils. My sweet pea brought back to me. I was just as excited as she was after she told me about her interview at Costco. The person who interviewed me has more tats on their neck than I'll ever be able to afford. And she's in recovery too. I can tell. Next summer, the plan was to run soccer camps. She had the joy of a person newly in love when she told me that Stacy agreed to be her sponsor. Says I need to go to every meeting she goes to. Wants me to write out a fourth step. I know the therapist's told you about that, and well, you like this shit the best. She says no relationships for a year, since I'd only attract predators and dope fiends right now. The day I met Stacy was a lazy Saturday, summer hitting its peak. Heather had spent part of the day handing out garden vegetables to the homeless for the very first time. And afterwards, like a priest preparing communion, she started preparing dinner with her own pickings, starting with eggplant. The eggplant had grown into a big, bulging, deformed purple thing, but certainly well enough to eat. Homegrown, and soon to be home-cooked. The closer things are to their original form, more it puts us as God intended, Heather said more than once. I watched her work in the kitchen, her hair the color of golden maize, and tied loosely in a ponytail. We had no obligations that day, no dope in our life, and and it all felt like a perfect day. After a confident knock on the front door, I welcomed Stacy inside. She scanned our house with a discerning gaze, but avoided my eyes. I was sure in private conversation she'd heard the worst parts of my life, but that was okay. I could see why Tara was drawn to her. The squinty slits of her eyes shot tiny rays of warmth. Ions of energy zip-zapped around her body and made the room light up. She was older than I had figured, and as I shook her hand, I thought of how I was looking at one version of my future daughter. Tara could be this woman 10 years from now, with lines of experience drawn on her face and eyes that look straight through you. Not out of spite, but because your world was insignificant compared to what she'd been through. An aged redwood with wisdom you just wouldn't understand. A stalwart of sobriety, scars inside, making her unbreakable. Awkward silence followed while we waited for Tara, but I killed it quickly. "Thank you for taking her," I said, and I meant it. "My pleasure, Mr. Snyder. Whatever it takes to stay clean, and we all need protection." "Protection," I said in agreement. My eyes finally locked with hers for one cold second, and I felt the killer in both of us connect, for surely she would do exactly as I had done, if she felt it was needed, if the cause was noble enough. Tara came out of the bedroom, her hair spiked sharp as knives, her eyes clear, her feet eager to move forward. "Thanks, Dad," she said. I wasn't sure what for, but before I knew it, she'd kissed me on the cheek, stuffed her cell phone in her pocket, and was out the front door. I watched them drive off in a Hyundai, probably 12 years old and 100,000 miles on the vehicle, but quiet enough inside the car for them to share secrets I would never hear. I didn't need to hear them, for I had killed the cancer. Remission had set in. No evidence of disease. I just had to keep the way I removed the disease a secret, and as Heather prepared the meal with the grace of a dancer, I realized she would never know that the man she was married to had poked a hole in another human's neck and let his soil leak right out. "We're finally eating the fruits of our labor," she said as she chopped a cucumber. "But these vegetables need to look better. The shapes, the bulges, the discoloration. I gave them out to at least a dozen people today, and some were giving double takes. I told them that they don't look the same because they're natural and not genetically modified." "You reminded the folks to wash them, right?" I said. The moment was coming I'd be asked to eat from the garden, and the thought was distasteful for reasons I pretended were not obvious. "Yes, of course, but organic veggies don't require the same level of concern. There is nothing unnatural, no pesticides, just some soil that remains no matter how much washing you might do." The group today wasn't too picky, at least a dozen of them from the day shelter. One red-haired social worker lady drove them in her minivan with a "Meat is Murder" bumper sticker on the back. I couldn't help but laugh. The crew from the day shelter had certainly had their fill, and it looked like I would soon have mine. Eggplant parmesan, garlic bread, a sliced veggie tray. All of this waited for when Tara returned. I would have no choice. I'd have to eat. And each moment that went by, the words got louder in my head. The red peppers are his veins. The tomatoes, his plump heart. And the sage, his uncut hair. A buzz came from my phone, a text from Tara. "Meeting's done, home soon. Quick stop at Denny's for a pie." Heather didn't like this idea when I told her. I wasn't sure if it was the idea of pie or that Tara was choosing Denny's over a home-cooked meal. Either way, she started pacing back and forth, once in a while stopping at the veggie tray, crunching on a green pepper, then pacing some more. Her speed picked up. each step faster and louder than the last. She only stopped long enough to peek out the window, waiting anxiously for Tara to come home. I sat in silence, trying to ignore her, but my head felt feverish, burning more with each step she took. I couldn't hold out, so I finally asked a question I didn't really want the answer to. "What's wrong?" Heather stared into me as if the question was an insult. "First off, the NA meetings. What do they do there anyways? I am losing her. Do you see how distant she is? She is mine. I know her best. Others might love her, but I know her. I know how to make her feel better when she is sick. I know what she needs. I know her heart and what it wants. She's fine. She texted. We met her sponsor. She has a sponsor. What's really going on with you?" "Oh, I don't know. It's nonsense. Not logical. My muscles are all cramped up and my body itches and I've got some kind of flu bug, I think. Do we have anything stronger than Excedrin? I need something strong. I can feel it." She stormed off to the bathroom and started digging through the medicine cabinet. I could hear her shuffling through the shelves, and whatever she was finding was not what she wanted, and met with a curse word. Tylenol, Pepto-Bismol, travel-size shaving creams. That was all we had, and much of it was being dropped to the floor before she stomped back down the hall. The house shook with each step. "Didn't you hide some of Tara's Oxycontins? Didn't you? Or did you bury that too? Long as you didn't burn it first, I'll find it. You know that can't be buried that deep." Time stopped. Her words struck like lightning and shocked my soul, but I let on nothing. I feigned bewilderment and stayed silent. "You need to eat," she said, as if in conclusion. "Then you'd understand. Then you'd feel it. All that you planted, everything you put into the garden. It fed the plants, and now it's in my soul. The red peppers are his veins. The tomato, his plump red heart. And the sage, his uncut hair." Train whistles screeched in my ears, my head swirled in figure 88 infinity. I heard the clanking wheels of a grocery cart. How much time passed, it's hard to say. Seconds. Hours. But after Heather had torn through a few more drawers and shouted things like, "I know what's best for her," and "She is expecting me," Tara finally came through the door. She put her keys dutifully on the coffee table, Heather watching her every move, circling about like a shark, smelling blood. I sat helpless, wondering what sort of attack was being planned. Tara could read a room as well as anybody, and knew enough to stay silent until it showed itself. "Stacy seems brilliant. Just brilliant. She really does," Heather said. Her voice was fast and pressured, each syllable dripped in poison. "You think she knows what she's talking about, though? You think she really wants to stay clean?" Tara's eyes darted back and forth, and she ran her fingers through the black spikes of her hair. This all must have seemed a trick to her, and she knew the question had no answer. "What I mean is, are you sure Stacy has stayed clean all these years? Nonsense to think she's not used any kind of drugs. If she's learned how to quit, you sure she just doesn't use a little bit now and then? It would make sense." What kind of a question is that? She's an addict, like me. She doesn't use just a little bit of anything because she can't. "Well, your father and I smoked weed before. We told you that. Weed is natural. It is a plant, just like the vegetables. You know, if you get bored, it's logical you might want to smoke some weed. It just happens. And then there's surgeries you'll need. Doctors, dentists, they'll need to prescribe you opiates. I'm not trying to trip you up, but imagine never using a single drug again. It's not possible for people like you. Tara sat silent, aghast. Moments like these she'd usually blow up and dash out. But we never had a moment fully like this. And I had somehow become a witness instead of a player. Heather walked to where Tara sat on the couch, stood before her, and grabbed her arm. She turned it to reveal her wrist, then ran a fingernail down her tattoo. Her fingertip followed the blue line of her vein up and down, as if looking for a weak spot, finally stopping where the vein was at its thickest. Then she gave a tap, 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 like a phlebotomist ready to draw blood. "I know what you need now," Heather said. "I finally know you for real. Veins have been rested. It's time to stop this nonsense and make you feel good again." Tara yanked her arm back to her side, stood tall, and then bolted to her room. T-Rex followed, and I was alone with someone who just revealed a face I had never seen. Chapter 9. Tara Snyder. The feel of Mom's skin on mine since I was little had always felt so warm and wonderful. A true, natural high. It was why it made sense to me when I heard people say heroin is like the warm embrace of being back in my mother's womb. But at that moment, all I could feel was Mom's fingertip tapping at my wrist, hoping to raise a vein, as if trying to trigger me to get high. And it worked. God, I needed to shoot some dope into my vein. I needed Brett. Where was he? He would know how to take this pain away. I texted his number from my bedroom. No response. Same way it had been for months. I was sure he was in jail, but he was supposed to be on work release. I understand why you dumped my body. Everyone does that, I wanted to say. No, please, just come back to me. I need you now. I sat in bed, arms wrapped around my chest and fingernails clawing into the opposite arm. Hugging, rocking. T-Rex sniffed at my cheek, his nostrils cold, his nose wet. He licked my face, 2 quick ones, and stopped, as if sensing the taste of my hurt. He laid his head down in the blanket and breathed a sigh. He knew. Dogs know everything. That dam inside me was about to burst. I had nobody, just Stacy. I sent her a text. "You were right. I need a halfway house. Can you pick me up in the morning?" I stared at the phone, willing a response. It worked. "I will be there. Go to sleep tonight. Do not leave the house. Don't get high. Tomorrow, I'll be there." I started to pack. Chapter 10. Gregory Snyder. I could feel Brett's stink inside the house as I lay in bed that night. It stuck against my skin like the humid air of a Florida day. Obligatory thunderstorm gathering on the horizon. Heather was barely sleeping. She lay there trembling, sweaty, the sheets wet and stained. When she did slip into sleep, her dreams crept into mine, and I opened my eyes afraid to be trapped by her nightmare. Clearly, she was sick. The clock read 3:15 a.m. I walked the house. I knew Tara was up. Her light was on, and the creak of the hardwood floor revealed my movements. I thought of number 88. God, I needed to see him. Or some vodka. Or just a beer, but our house was completely dry, as it should be, I suppose. Instead, I dug some expired cough medicine out of the medicine cabinet. Directions called for 2 tablespoons. I took over 4. The alcohol warmed me in an instant, and the decongestant unclogged my gunk. I was finally able to sleep, dark and dreamless. I woke with a headache and an empty space next to me. I walked out of the bedroom to the fragile day ahead. Heather was up, cooking over the stove, her hair dangling free over the heat, not pulled up as usual. Omelette, basil seasoning, tomatoes, peppers, onions. Then, I'm going to my mom's. I need to help her with her pain meds. I had planned my words to say to her during my sleepless moments of the night, but the daylight revealed how weak they really were, so I forgot them all. Something's wrong, Heather. You're not right. You said things yesterday. We need to talk about what you said. No. She shot me down and ate in silence, her fingers trembling with fork in hand, her nerves twitching. Usually, there would be a plate waiting for me as well, but now there was none. I'm going to my mom's house. She's got what I need. I know she does. That much will get me going. Then, I'm going to the grave and setting free the body you buried. Nobody should die like that. I will be back home with the skull. Then Tara and I are going to fix up with some oxys. Then I'm going to take her to Russell, the same place you killed someone. We're going to buy some dope. I may sell some ass for dope just because that will really make you suffer. Do you hear yourself? I do. Tara needs to get high. She should suffer no longer. God grew us a garden of opium and coca and cannabis. We finally know her like never before, and we can cure her sickness from this garden and make her well. Never in my life had I prayed for a brain tumor, but that was what I was praying for. That Heather was psychotic from some growth pressing on her brainstem. Soon she would collapse, or vomit, or go so delirious she'd be rendered incapable of performing daily living skills, and I would be driving her to the emergency department. Sanity would be restored after a series of tests. But instead of madness, her senses seemed acute. She moved about the house vigilantly, a powerful golem of sorts, animated from elsewhere. After she went out the front door, car keys in hand, the silence of the house crashed in behind her. I waited in silence, hoping she might rush right back inside, put the keys back on the hook, and confess her lunacy. But nothing. My move. All right. I needed to fix things, protect things, stop the noise from getting in. I rushed to Tara's bedroom, knocked as I entered, and my voice was like a morning fire alarm. Tara! Sweet pea! Wake up! What are you doing today? We need to go. Mom is not okay. You saw that, Tara. Stacy is wonderful. Tara, wake up. Stop. Breathe. I was moving too fast. She looked at me with one eye closed, the other squinty and red. She'd been up late, which was clear from her face and from the bags packed and ready to go. A Nike duffel bag, her laptop, and a bag full of toiletries were placed bedside. I'm gone, Dad. I am gone. Soon as Stacy can get me, I am gone. You know what? Good. Maybe that is a good idea. You get some space, for a while at least. Things are going on. Your mom, it's not just her, Dad. It's everything. You think Stacy is smart, I know you do, and she has been telling me to accept you and Mom for who you are. Says you are doing all you can, but you never parented me. You never parented me. Just little versions of yourself. Mom mistakes doing nothing for letting me grow, and you just fence me in to control me. The first pill you gave me was just one mistake, but you've been pumping me full of your medicine ever since. Always trying to make me be something that you wanted. Something that made you feel good. Damned what I feel. Boys like Brett are all I could find. Brett's right. You love me, but don't know me. Her words were sharp and hurt like a paper cut. This wasn't the dope speaking. This wasn't insanity. This was clarity. Her post-NA meeting coffee shop talks with Stacy had given her such insight. T-Rex gazed up at me with sad eyes and in silent agreement. I had no argument back. Wrongs needed to be undone best I could. You're right. We'll talk. I'll do better. I'll drive you anywhere you need to go. I will. Let me track down your mom first. God, how I craved a hug and the words, I love you, at that moment, but there was neither to be had. There were trials to be faced before I deserved an embrace. And I was off to face them. I needed to deal with Heather. She was going to her mom's house to manage her pain meds. And then going to the garden. I would cut her off there. I drove there with precision, and upon arriving, circled the place slowly, as if on a stakeout. Nobody was there, and the fence was wide open. The sign, Garden of Friends, was coated with neighborhood dirt, but still more fresh than its surroundings. Rows of tomatoes twining up the stakes, peppers dangling from stalks. All of it seemed a wild urban garden salad for the world to feast on. The scarecrow stood in the center of it all, his body slightly tilted, as if shifting in the soil. His smile remained, his gaze empty, and I envied his life without worries. Plastic bags blown by the wind had gathered along the fence. Somewhere underneath it all, I pretended Brett was still alive and trying to crawl his way out of his grave. His heart beat against the inside of my skull. What will I do when I see Heather anyway? I didn't know. Ideas and solutions rushed through me. Dig up Brett's grave before Heather arrives. Call 911. Let them witness Heather's insanity and take her away. Put Heather down. Keep the noise out. Ideas got more ridiculous with each passing second, each one worse than the last, all of it aimed to find the pressure valve in my head. and release what was inside. There was only one way to silence the world: a puff of crack rock and the whistle of the train. I needed to see number 88. Just the thought of it pumped adrenaline through me and stopped my fear. I could go get some and be back in just moments. The car seemed happy with my choice and navigated along the familiar trail from garden to dope house. Oh, my stomach gurgled with digestive juice as strong as battery acid while I walked up to the house and knocked. Eyes through the peephole sized me up. Facial recognition happened quick enough, and the lock was undone. And there he was, Russell. The man's shirt was off, and the handle of a gun stuck out of his waistband. Behind him, the front room was empty, so different from last time when it was nearly full. I wondered if number 88 was still inside. Perhaps he had never left and was stuck in the basement, eating insects off the ground, begging for drug money. You say, what you want this time? Just looking to smoke a bit in your basement, if I can. He grunted with disgust and stretched his arms in the air. Give me 30. I'll give you a nice rock and a place to smoke, and then you get the fuck out. The transaction happened fast and familiar, just like a regular at a coffee shop. I walked down the stairs, the steps creeping louder the lower I got, but all was silent at the bottom. I ducked my head under the wooden beam. Nobody was there at all. It was both silent and empty. I kept waiting for something to stir, a shadow to move, a person to pop out who had been camouflaged in the clutter, but nothing. Just a washer and dryer, old clothes, a furnace. A bottle of Gilby's gin sat on a card table. Tinfoil wrappers on the ground, syringes lined the corners of the wall like baseboard. Oh, I needed to do this fast. Things were happening back in my real world and ready to explode. I found an old stem, my insides so loose and excited I feared I might shit my pants. My heart pounded against my sternum, everything inside on edge, waiting for that orgasmic release that would come once I sparked up the lighter and the flame hit the rock. And it came. The cold, metallic smoke filled my lungs, and the train whistle screeched. My spine tingled and shot up erect, my eyes bulged open, my jaw hung loose and low. My heart boomed from somewhere deep as the hells of the earth. I could hear the blood rush through my ears, too much to bear. So I fired up the flames again and took another hit. One last huff. The tiny rock took everything away. Oh, my brain rattled. No longer a train whistle, but the rattle, rattle, clank, clank, clank of a broken grocery cart. Out of smoke. I heard a familiar voice speak to me. It's just us. Hell is empty. The devils were here, but now they've risen. Looking for Tara. His words were vivid, but his body hazy. Infinite Circle 88 seemed to be moving like snakes inside his green t-shirt. The man seemed more shriveled than the first time I saw him. His cheeks had sunk into his jaw and his eyeballs bulged out as if they might fall to the ground. His hand reached out to me, summoning the crack from my hand, and I handed over the stem and lighter on command. He put it to his lips. The flame shot from the lighter, and I heard the crackling of the rock. He puffed out the smoke in such relief. All of them were here, all the devils, all them dope fiends. All of them from one truck, a bunch of lost, homeless souls, and they bought a stash of dope. And just like you, they said to me, "We are looking for Tara. We used to get high with her. Have you seen her? You remember that? He took another hit, this one like a scuba diver sucking on his oxygen tank. What did you tell them? How many were there? Oh, Baker's dozen at least. Hard to say, really, but I didn't tell him nothing. What the fuck you think I am? I just said, nah, it's been a few days, ain't seen her. That's how we lie around here, man. We don't say the full truth. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm the one trying to keep her safe. I'm her dad. That's right. I'm her dad. Oh, shit, her goddamn dad? Well, bad news, bro. They all said they know where she's at. Said they know where she lives. They busted out of here real fast, armed with enough dope to make an army nod out. His eyes kept bulging, both of them ready to drop and bounce on the floor. Bullshit. You're lying. You're not even real. Nobody's here right now. I'm not here. I'm leaving. I got up to leave, but my body seemed not my own. I was just a vapor of smoke blown in the air from this scraggly crackhead, and his voice boomed like a god. Or a devil. You fucking idiot, man. Just reaping what you sown. You made them what they are. Each one of them has a chunk of bread inside of them. Of fucking course they want to shoot some dope into your daughter's veins. They are going to chop her up. You hear me? Just like you did to Brett. Chop her up! I ran up the stairs, racing as if the devil were at my heels, and went straight out the front door. The outside air was a cold pool compared to the hell of the basement below. Still, the words would not stop. Chop her up. Chapter 11. Tara Snyder. When you wake up, text me. I need to talk. The text to Stacy was sent, but I hadn't received a reply. It was still early. Stacy stayed up late and slept in late. Her biological clock was etched in stone from snorting coke in New York bars, then walking home when the sun came up. Where the hell is Dad? I scratched T-Rex deep with my nails, right under his ear where he liked it, and he growled in approval. I was his drug, and I was leaving him. I'll come back for you. I promise. I paced the room, stopping to check my phone every few seconds. Halfway house. What was I doing? Halfway houses seem like jail with their rules and curfews and drama queens. House meetings because so-and-so ate my cottage cheese out of the fridge that had my name on it, and other nonsense that would make anyone living there want to sneak out at night to get high. My skull was cracking, and everything inside was about to spill out. Mom's ugliness was spilling out too. How the hell did she hide her crazy all these years? Dad left because it was too much. Where is he? He said he'd be right back. I kept pacing, glancing out the window at the driveway, looking for Dad, for Brett, for Stacy, anybody to rescue me. I couldn't wait to grab my bags off the ground and bail out of this house. T-Rex's head was in his paws, and his pupils followed me across the room. He knew something was up. He would wither and die here, same as me. But I'll come back for him. Finally, a car pulled into the driveway. My mom's. She got out in a rush, backpack over her shoulder, moving like she forgot something inside. The front door opened, the airtight vacuum of the house broken. I heard her bustling inside as if ready to evacuate, sounds of things being moved, and then footsteps down the hall. Creaky hardwood, shouting alarms. I could hear her just outside my door, listening for me while I listened to her. And then Finally, the rap of bony knuckles knocking on my bedroom door. I didn't say a word. "Oh, Tara, come on," she shouted through the door. "There are things, so many things. Thank God you're here. First, we need to get you right, fix you up, and then we need to get the body. After that, there's truth to be told." Tap, tap, tap. Her knuckles rapped again, but this time she turned the door handle, swung the door open, and stood in the doorway. Her eyes were ablaze, and her skin sweaty, like she'd been in a sauna. The stench from her skin was much worse than sweat. Much worse than body odor. "I owe you an apology. I really do." An apology was the only acceptable way for her to start, but I wasn't ready to hear it. She took my silence as an invitation and walked right in. "Tara, I am so sorry. Sorry for all the mistakes I made. You were right and I was wrong. I realized my nonsense. Finally, I know you. I know you. I understand why you get high. It's this life. It makes us sick. And you had the cure all along and we took it away from you again and again, and it was cruel." I looked at my bags on the floor and wondered if I could carry them all in one trip. I wanted to storm out and not come back. Mom was a mess, her hair unkempt like I'd never seen it before. Each strand had a life of its own and was coiling about her head. Her skin changed shades. And her breath. Oh, that's what stinks, it's her breath. What food had caused it to reek, I could not tell. "Mom, you are fucked, okay? I'm done. I'm so out. Dad's coming. I am leaving soon." "It's him!" Her voice fired hard enough to make me flinch. "It's always been him. Your dad killed him. I know this now. You wouldn't believe me, but I know this and so much else. The truth has filled my head, but so has sorrow. Oh, such sorrow for all the suffering I put you through. Mom has Alzheimer's dementia. I could hear the cogs slipping. She stepped toward me, her hands reaching out, her fingers all bone, trembling. My face waited to flinch as she touched my cheek. Cold, icy, but the stench that seeped from her was warm, thick. Then I recognized it. Manure. She smelled like cow shit. It starts with this. She whipped her hand up to my face, just at eye level, and a prescription bottle floated before me. My heart valves fired, black blood shot through my body, valves loosened, tiny cells in my muscles awakened from their death. Ghouls, ready to feed. OxyContin. My grandmother's name was on the white prescription label, Cecilia Snyder. I recognized it in an instant, just like the bottle I had stolen from before. Just like the bottle my dad tapped into when he wanted me to play in states. I looked into my mom's face, sure it wasn't really hers. Someone else was inside her body. Her eyes were no longer ocean blue, but Arctic ice. We can chop them up and snort, she said, as she shook the bottle, ka-ching, ka-ching. Oh God, it's been so long, and I know you need this. It's not heroin, I am sorry for that, But we'll be shooting up some dope soon enough, smacking our veins together, me and you, sticking a needle in our arms, pushing back the pain of this life. Oh, a perfect day. You and me. What the hell, Mom? I said through tears. Is this some sick test? You have no idea how much I want to, okay? Is that what you want to hear? But I am finally trying not to. I want to live. So no. Fuck no. Not today. Do I pass your sick test? I am leaving. I'll walk. I grabbed my bag, just one, and tried to take a step, but she blocked the door. I thought you might say that. There's something you should see. She towered in front of me, flung the backpack off her shoulder, and then dumped the contents onto the bed. Something bounced on top of the comforter. It rolled like a bowling ball, though it was no ball, but a human head. It was soiled, shriveled from decay with no hair on top, and stinking of manure. T-Rex gave it a sniff, one lick, and then turned away. My hand was over my mouth, my chin quivering, my gut aching. My God, the head seemed real. My mom had killed someone. And I needed to get out of there. I needed to grab those pills and get high. I needed to see who it was. I needed to end my own life. I needed to find out. With the back of my hand, I turned the head. The empty eye sockets were full of soil. Burnt skin clung to the skull. The jaw seemed as if stuck in a laugh. It was Brett. What did you do? Oh, it wasn't me. Your dad killed him, buried him in the garden. And now he is in all of us who plucked its luscious fruit. Oh, if only your father hadn't killed him. Oh, but let us celebrate his life and the way you two lived it. Screams shot from my mouth. The room seemed to strobe light. My feet were heavy, but needed to move, and finally obeyed. I forgot the bags and dashed. I smashed into my mom, and the bottle of pills fell to the ground. I heard them rain under the hard wood as I rushed to the front door. I twisted the handle, heaved it open, and took 2 steps onto the front porch as tears and screams were pouring out of me. Outside. Oh, fresh air and freedom to breathe. But my way was blocked. I had stumbled into a mosh pit of vagrants. A pack of beggars were on my porch, certainly there by mistake, and I waited for them to go, to walk off to whatever place they were meant to be, because it certainly wasn't there. Instead, their dark eyes grew wide, tearing into mine, each one of them sizing me up. They started to pant like wild dogs and moved like hyenas ready to circle me up. A red-haired woman wearing a yellow dress stood behind them, the only one who did not seem homeless. The rest had a stench that seeped from their jackets and oversized sweaters. Their eyes bugged out of their heads as if they had been waiting to see me. I saw no safe passage. This was no mistake. This was a sickly disease brought to life. I needed to retreat. I took 2 steps back to my front door, hand on the doorknob, ready to open, and bumped into my mom. A smirk spread on her face, She blinked twice as if to say goodbye. Then, she shut the door. I heard the bulbs twist. I felt 6 years old again, scared, head burning with fever, waiting for someone to touch my forehead with the coolness of her palm, to bring me aspirin and a glass of ice water, tuck me in, promise to check on me. Instead, I had no one. I was locked out. The group pounced. Hands grabbed at me, fingernails clawed, mouths speaking in tongues with jumbled insanity. One beast with many mouths and dozens of arms. Fingernails scratched my face while arms secured my neck in a headlock. My leg was yanked so hard it felt pulled from its socket. I kicked and punched until my arms and legs were no longer mine. They had seized. I screamed for help until a dirty hand cupped my mouth. Nasty soil filled my tongue and melted inside my saliva. A taste. I remembered. Next came the weapons. The familiar sharp prick of a syringe poked me in the jugular. The metal was a sharp snake bite. First one, and then another, and then a third. A complete succession of needles punctured into me, and I howled with each one. I was just a pincushion with syringes sticking out of me. And the creatures shot me full of dope. As they dragged me away, and my last scream shot out fierce into the sky, I saw my dad pull into the driveway. Our eyes locked, but he couldn't hear me in the airtight, soundproof cabin of his car. But it didn't matter, for this group of fiends was carrying me far away. They loaded me in the back of a rusty red truck with a "Meat is Murder" bumper sticker on the back. And it was all just fine. I was flowing back down the warm river of heroin. The beautiful, lazy river of heroin. Chapter 12. Gregory Snyder. My decisions at that moment are replayed often, and I think of possible pasts that could have unfolded. The image of Tara being dragged away will never leave. I see the look of terror on her face, the syringes sticking out of her neck, her veins bulging, her mouth wide open in a scream that I could not hear. I knew right away who took her, the group of ghouls who first fed from the Garden of Friends. Had I chased them down after they had loaded Tara up after that run inside the house to where Heather was unconscious in front of a pile of OxyContin, I might have saved my daughter. As it was, I looked about the house frantically and found Brett's decomposed skull on Tara's bed. Calling the cops was not an option. Instead, I needed to get rid of the skull. I wrapped it up in Tara's comforter, placed it in the trunk, and then carried Heather to the front seat. A fast drive to the hospital, a quick drop-off for Heather, and then I found a perfectly hidden dumpster to discard the skull. Tara's down comforter, her resting place with T-Rex for so many years, had become a grubby makeshift coffin for Brett's now severed head. If only I had chosen a dumpster for Brett's whole body instead of the garden grave many months before, Tara was never found, but Heather continued her insanity. She injected dope openly in my presence and nodded out on the couch often. Other times, she left the house for days looking for Tara. I searched as well, both of us doing our part to get her back. But if the day came that Tara was actually found, I feared what might happen if Heather got to her first. "She is sick, and I need to get her well," I heard her say more than once. I started driving down the streets of Detroit, frequented by the homeless, hoping to find Lorenzo pushing his grocery cart. Or I waited in front of the abandoned urban garden, but couldn't spot any signs of the nomad. Other times, I camped out at Russell's to see if Tara might walk up. She never showed, night after night. So, eventually, I started going inside myself to smoke a few rocks. I was not giving up hope that Tara was alive. But I also needed to hear the train whistle, the electric buzz of crack cocaine. The puff of each stem was the shot of electricity that gave me life. Once or twice, I stayed in Russell's basement overnight, hoping for a number 88 that would never come. Heather's eyes got more and more vacant, her skin dotted with track marks. And when she finally disappeared for good, I barely noticed, since it happened in stages. My job suffered as well. Poor attendance, bad excuses, disciplinary action. And I eagerly agreed to an early buyout when offered, and soon after dipped into my 401k. I remortgaged my house to lower payment and sold some things on Craigslist for cash. Each time I left home, I kept the door unlocked, hoping that Tara or Heather might come back. If nothing else, looking for something to pawn. The glorious day came when something went missing. T-Rex, whose eyes had become permanently sad and had become accustomed to pooping in the basement when I left him there for too long, was gone. Either I'd left the door open and not noticed him run out, or someone had taken him, perhaps his favorite human, who was out there somewhere, still alive. More hope that Tara might be alive came straight to my house one night. I didn't need to seek it out. It found me. I was sitting on my front porch a dark summer night, the crickets in full concert, when I heard the metallic rattle of a grocery cart on the sidewalk. Rattle, rattle, clank, clank, clank. The noise shook memories loose. Lorenzo. He turned into my driveway, eyes squinting as if I was an illusion. He'd lost weight over the years, and it seemed like each step he took hurt his bones. His beard was thin, and now completely white. His grocery cart was still brimming with plastic bags of all sorts, and he parked it so that it would not roll away. I stood tall, open arms, waiting to hear his message. "This is where she was born?" he asked, lips flapping over his gums where he had no teeth. "This is where she lived. I have found it and have traveled far. Lots of stops and starts. Lots of false hopes." Lorenzo, have you seen her? She's alive? Amazing what a shot of Narcan will do for an overdosed body. Brings the dead to life. And your sweet pea got her a shot of that just in time. Oh, yes, she did. What do you know? Tell me now. I need to find her. Oh, indeed. Seems someone is looking for her. Did you know that? Half the city, it seems, wants to put some dope up in her veins. But it is me, of all of them who have looked. It is me who knows the most. It is I who has found the most. Do you have time to hear my story? Certainly. You need to tell me. Tell me. Please. I need to know. I can tell you that I can, and I can prove that the story is true, for I do know that you won't believe a word of it. Once I tell you, and then show you, I need you to promise me this. You must let me keep that which is mine, that which I found, for it is a treasure. A treasure indeed, something that the whole garden of fiends sprouting about this town would covet. Tell me please, whatever you say is fine, I just need to know. Take a seat then, and I shall. Tara ended up with a man named Jervis Samsa, and this is what happened. Listen to my tale. Chapter 13. Tara and Jervis. Jervis Samsa lay awake in bed, twitching in and out of detox dreams. Poison sweat ran from his pores and dampened the sheets. He wanted to rip out his muscles that cramped in pain. The lifeblood was gone from his blood. No dope for a day, not since he got high with Tara. He lay there, hoping she'd return with some cash, but never did. And now, he had nothing. Millions of tiny, cramping cells fought for life in his body. He imagined them as desperate amoebas, squirming in frantic fear before they imploded to their death. Inside his legs, the cells were butchering each other, sucking at each other's marrow like cannibals. But the darkest of pain was in his back. He was sure that if he cut open a vertebra, black, burning liquid would boil out of him. He opened his eyes and saw Tara's favorite black hoodie crumpled up on the carpet. He traced the orange letters of Slipknot written in flames on the sleeve. He hadn't seen Tara for days. She was gone. Probably got picked up by the cops for shoplifting or possession, he figured, and was spending the weekend in jail. She'd be just as bogue as he was, sick as all hell, wearing her orange smock and wishing she were dead, but forced to live, laying on a concrete floor or a plastic mattress. But Tara could handle herself, he figured. She was older and had been using heroin much longer. Nothing to worry about too much. In days past, they would lie together in his basement bedroom, alone in their underworld, and not giving a shit what happened above. She soothed his soul like none other. And best part was, she would always know how to come up with money for dope. Nobody could shoot a move or pull some tricks and get some heroin like Tara. Loud bangs blasted from the basement door. Bang, 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 bang. His mother was pounding, and it felt like a hammer to his brain. Stop! Jervis wanted to scream back, but had no energy. So, instead, just shut his eyes. The banging kept on, and he couldn't help but let Neil Young lyrics slip into his thoughts. I caught you knocking at my cellar door. I love you, baby. Can I have some more? Neil understood how the ugliness of life can only be lifted by the beauty of a heroin high. And Jervis had plenty of ugliness, but not a scrap of heroin to shoot it away. Times like these, he blamed his mom. He hated his dad. And God, did he need his Tara. Tara never talked about her family. Not her dad, not her mom. She pretended she had no life before him, but she listened when Jervis talked about his own devil of a dad, who dished out generous beatings. Growing up, Jervis always felt safest when his dad was nodding out from dope or in prison. Jervis felt like a huge burden was lifted after his dad died in prison, and his ashes were sent home in a box.
He died and left me with nothing but his junkie kid. You take him with you in the basement,
his mom had said, and handed him the urn.
Both of you stay buried down there.
His dad must have shot $1 million of smack into his arm. Now all of it was burnt into ashes and held inside the gold-colored urn on his dresser. Jervis was a disappointment to his famous dad, the legendary wizard of smack, because there he was. No dope money, muscles bubbling and boiling, each cell being tortured inside. God, he needed a fix, but was out of options. Way too sick to rip someone off, no credit with the dealers. Nothing. If only Tara could help him out. Lyrics from Neil Young kept playing in his mind. I know that some of you understand. Milk blood to keep from running out. Milk blood. He needed to learn how to milk blood, leaving some blood in the needle with just a trace of heroin inside for moments like these. If only he had a bit of Tara's dope-filled blood with him. But he didn't have shit. The chamber was empty. His mom was his only hope. Just 2 days before, he'd hit up her gold jewelry locked in the cabinet, dug deep for that one, unscrewed the locks on the hinges and grabbed jewelry that hadn't been worn in years. He tightened the screws back on good enough so she'd never know. The pawn shop gave him $120 for the gold. He needed to shoot a move just like that. Or maybe if he promised her he'd go to detox, the way Tara always talked about. But first, he needed $20, or $50, just a little to get him through. And when Tara came back, they would go to detox together. He dragged his weight up the stairs. His sweaty hands tried to twist the doorknob, but could not. It was stuck solid. Didn't turn. What the hell's that? He twisted harder and palms spun around the knob, and yes, the damn thing was locked. He made a fist and pounded 3 times solid. Bam, bam, bam.
Mom, what happened? Mom, what is this? Come on, Mom, unlock the door.
Then he noticed tiny nail points splintering the door jamb. They had been hammered through the wood, angled from the door into the frame. The door wasn't just locked. It was nailed shut.
Mom, what the fuck is this?
Jervis screamed. He pounded harder, and with each pound noticed another nail. He smashed his body into the door, but it would not give.
Mom, come on, Mom, please. I know, Mom, I know, you're right. You're right, I'm hurt, Mom. Come on, Mom. I really am. I'm hurt bad.
Silence. The tears started to come. Real tears. This was so unfair, and he wanted to kill her right then and there.
Why would she do this to me? How could she make me suffer?
As if to answer, his mother spoke from the other side of the door.
You think you'll steal from me? You think you're slick? I went through this with your father, so I know how to handle you. That gold was your grandmother's, you little piece of crap. You should have shoved it up your ass instead of your veins. Now look at you. I will open up in 3 days. 3 days you can stay down there, and you can come up when you're no longer full of poison. You got a toilet, and you got water. You're fine. What? What are you talking about? Mom, come on. Open up and show me. I didn't steal a goddamn thing. Maybe it was Tara. She maybe did that. She does those things. Goddamn Tara. She's in jail, Mom. Come on. Oh, she ain't in jail. That girl's better than you and hopefully will leave you for good this time. You stupid bitch! Open this thing up before I smack the shit out of you! He knew that wasn't going to work, but still pounded an exclamation point at the door. The solid wood now hurt his hand. God, he needed some dope. For an hour, he sat there, giving the door a bang with his fist every few minutes. Boom. Like a deathly drum beat. Boom. But nothing. Boom. Screams went unanswered. His brain was being scattered. His insides quivered. It was all so crazy, and he needed to get out soon. And where the hell was Tara? Revenge fantasies filled the mush in his head, and he went back downstairs to search through his arsenal. The room had already been scoured for dope. No Vicodins, no Percocets, no weed, no liquor, no nothing. He needed something. Something to make her sad enough or angry enough or scared enough to open the door. Dad. There was Dad and what was left of him. He went to the urn and opened the top. More than once, he had taken the ashes out and sifted through the gray matter. It was chunky, sooty, and meatier than a cigarette ash, like the stuff that fell onto the bottom of a grill over time. He had become familiar with the ashes. Time to let Dad out of the urn again. Maybe blow the ashes under the door. Maybe that. His shaky fingers poured out the contents and he dabbed at their dryness. So rich, so delicate, hypnotizing. The flakes became a haze. Brain matter and ash became one. And then, the voices. Just shoot it. What? Boil it up and shoot it. Woozy. He needed water. He needed Tara. He needed something to stop the voices, but only dope would do that. Command auditory hallucinations was what the doctors had called the voices after he'd been in and out of hospitals as a teenager. Psychiatrists pushed lithium and Zyprexa, but thank God he had stumbled upon heroin. It was the only medicine that put the evil to rest and opened up the gates of heaven. Son, you need something to fix with now. Shoot some. A little part of it in everyone, come on. The voice flickered like a candle in his dark head. It was time to curl back up in bed and turn off the world. But the voices kept coming. Milk blood to keep from running out. He grabbed the metal spoon within reach, blackened from so many days of flame, and used it to push the ashes into shapes. He mixed them around as if they were a bowl of Cheerios, tiny piles, little mountains, rivers in between. A small land where his father was God. Eyes transfixed at the gray nothingness pile for who knows how long, until he finally scooped some up on his spoon. Ashes of burnt up smack. Go ahead, boil it and fix up. Bullshit. Boil it and fix up! Memories flashed before him of crushing, boiling, and shooting up Vicodin, of shooting up cocaine, of hitting his veins with whatever got him high. Fixing up was an automatic and involuntary as breathing, and soon water was in the spoon. The ashy matter soaked in the water until the mixture became a dark pool of liquid. There's gotta be dope left in there, he told himself. There is. Oh, there is. Well, where else would it go? It's here. No time for cotton filter. This is Dad. Fuck you, Mom. Fuck you. The syringe tip was old and used, but it drew the chunky liquid. He held the needle in the air, snapped it for bubbles, and felt his blood start to warm in anticipation. The pinprick hit its mark. The needle puncture was bliss. He drew back and saw red blood swirl in the dark, oily liquid of the barrel. Yes. Angelic music filled his ears when he pushed the plunger in. He felt the warmth spread through his back. Like an army, it fought back the evil sickness that had invaded his body. His back loosened as if sprouting wings and ready to fly. He looked at his flesh and imagined he could see the new ash blood traveling dark and fast through his body. No, he wasn't imagining it. He could really see it, couldn't he? Life blood was going through his veins to the center of his brain, and he was being reborn. The surge was ecstatic, and as it coursed through his body, the pile spoke to him over and over, summoning him to consume the flesh of his father into his veins. Music filled the basement for days. He was down there, his soul hummed on fire. Instruments played from inside of him as if using his veins as strings. Cramping gave way to strength. Sweat and shakes left, and precision and laser focus grew. Ages seemed to pass through him along with the ashes. Unlived memories built in his brain, unfelt sensations of a history larger than his years. Blue veins were being filled with shades of gray and black. Old skin was discarded, and new skin grew. The basement was no longer a dungeon, but a new kind of heaven. The sun rose and fell 3 times while he filled himself up with daddy smack. The pile was near gone when the banging noises from his mom returned from upstairs. Boom, boom, boom. I caught you knocking at my cellar door. I love you, baby. Oh, can I have some more? The noise didn't make him flinch, not this time. His body was powerful and ready for the footsteps that were coming down the stairs. Jervis, come on up now. Damn it, you must be hungry. Come on up, the door's open. Let's talk about this. He said nothing. He felt so large, standing there, and she had become so small. Jervis? Jervis? She said his name with each step. What's going on? Don't you want to come up? She turned the corner from the stairs, and whatever she saw shocked her silent. Jervis felt a voice rise from deep within his gut that he did not recognize as his own. The gold jewelry was never yours. It came from me and belonged to the boy. It was his birthright. The words came out with power and rage. His flesh gleamed with a pulsating redness from the blood boiling beneath. His muscles ripped, and he cocked back a fist ready to strike. She fell to the ground with the first punch, and then he beat on her face until it could be beaten on no more. Her eyes were swollen shut, her body limp on the floor, and Jervis stood over her, waiting for her next move. But nothing. Her life couldn't be over. Could it? She'd always been there, always had something to say, but now her blood was set free and running like a red river on the floor. A voice came from up the stairs. Somebody was calling his name. It was Tara. Her feet pitter-pattered on each step, and soon he was looking into her eyes. She seemed fresh, more alive, younger even, but terrified. Neither of them could speak at first. The air of death in the basement gagged them both. Jervis? Is that you? What happened? You don't look right. And what the fuck did you do? I didn't do anything. I was trapped. I had to get out. Where were you? Detox, like I told you. Me first, you second. We agreed. You don't remember? You never said that. I did too. I did say that. I did, and you agreed. I left you voicemails every day to come get me. But when you didn't, I knew that meant you loved me and wanted me to stay. Tara bent down to the body on the ground. Your mom, she's... What did you do, Jervis? I don't know. I don't know, Tara. I don't know what's happening to me. Tara, what's happening to me? The strength had left him. He put his arms to his side and pleaded. He wanted a hug, but she looked at him too scared to get close. Cramps flooded back into his muscles. The army of strength retreated out of his blood. The implosion of cramping cells was returning, and nausea spread from his gut up his spine. He needed to be held. He needed the warmth of his mother or his girlfriend or his heroine. He fell into her arms. Detox. Now he remembered. She went there like they had planned. But he had lied. He never planned on going. He thought she was full of shit, that she wasn't going, that she'd be back to get high. But she did go get clean. She was something different now. The black strings of her spiky hair seemed to have grown softer, her skin against his own more pure. 3 days clean. But the history of shooting smack was still there and could not be erased. He sniffed at the base of her neck and it came out of her pores. He felt the dope in her flesh. It was there in each and every cell. And, as always, in her soul. So much money and so many years of smack. No detox could get that out of her. Jervis, you know what Tara has in her blood, don't you? The voice of his dad came back in a wave of black nausea. He needed to do something. Now, get high and stop the evil and swing the gates of heaven back open. But Tara wasn't going to get high with him anymore. Oh, he could feel it. But she would get him high. All of her. Every last cell. He was more worried about how he could burn her up into ashes than how he was going to kill her. That part would be easy. Just thinking of her flesh boiled up into ashes made his blood warm. His hands clutched around her neck. How soft her flesh was. His thumbs pressed against her windpipe. How easy to crack. And he began to squeeze. The color of her skin changed. She tried to gag, so he squeezed tighter and closed her windpipe. Her body finally collapsed to the floor, right next to his mom. We need to get high, Jervis. Milk blood to keep from running out. He picked up her wrist. It was still warm, with blood running in her veins. He read her tattoo. The girl with kaleidoscope eyes was inked across her underarm. He gathered the needle from the bedstand and poked her vein to draw some blood the way she had done 1,000 times in his basement bedroom. Then he injected her blood into his own. Oh, yes. He
He felt like an explorer blasting into new lands when he spiked Tara's blood into his veins. His dad spoke with approval. "Oh, Jervis, you are worthy of being my son. I am with you always." Tara may still be alive, but her life and her body was all his. He would never run out of dope again. Never. We need more, Jervis, you red devil. You've always been this way. Always. Voice of his dad or his own thoughts. It all hurt to figure out which, all of it just a pile of gray matter ash, but it was true. He had tasted her blood and needed more. Ashes to ashes. Dust to dust. An axe. Yes, there was one in the garage. He would lop off one of her limbs, chop her up, torch up the flesh, scrape off the ash, and shoot it. The sound of paws pattered down the stairs. It was Tara's old dog. It sniffed at her cheek and then licked, as if cleaning a wound. Tara's eyes fluttered. The kaleidoscope colors inside awoke and looked up at him. She was waking up. Time to get the axe. Chapter the Last. Lorenzo took in a gulp of air, swallowed, and said no more. The story had to be a lie, but the dog, the descriptions of Tara, so much of it rang with truth. And then what? What happened to her? You're not done. Tell me. Oh, my friend, you do not want to know. Lorenzo shook his head, face down to the earth, one hand gripping his shopping cart. Bullshit! It's because you don't know either. None of this is true. This is some urban legend, a myth, names changed, bits of truth tossed in, but just some dumpster fire ghost story you homeless fucks tell each other when you get bored. Oh, I may be a homeless fuck, but the story is true. And I have proof. My fists clenched. My heart erupted. My brain was full of dread that I wanted to blow back with the whistle of a crack cocaine steam engine train. The insane homeless man rustled through the plastic bags in his shopping cart, and my hopes for some sort of closure on my daughter's fate depended on what he might find. Proof, yes, proof. Something important to show you. Finally, he did. Here it is, he said, and raised his catch in the air as if holding a prized fish for a picture. Your daughter's forearm, from wrist to elbow, not in the best shape since it has been a lot of years, but it's here, nonetheless. His hand was wrapped around the piece of limb as if it were a big ham bone, and it looked partly cooked just the same. Pockmarks were dotted all about the piece of meat. Flesh, muscle, and tendon dangled from the edges. My hope that this was a cruel hoax, that this was not a piece of Tara's arm, were dashed when I squinted and looked closer. I could make out the etchings of a black tattoo, written in cursive. Earl, with kaleidoscope eyes. Part of the phrase covered by his fingers. Jervis must have chopped off a limb, probably wanted the ashes, but I got it now. So you see, it is true, and this arm is my treasure. Once in a while, when I score some dope, I shoot some into your little sweet pea's arm. She's a dope fiend's dream. And it wouldn't be the same to get high without her. And then he walked off. The rattle, rattle, clank, clank left me alone and disappeared back down the sidewalk, the way it came. How I did not satisfy my clenched fist by crashing it on Lorenzo's fragile face, I will never know. But I let him walk while the rage burrowed inside me and found a permanent home. Perhaps I needed to live with the curse as my punishment, but the horror that filled me made the world go black. Not just at that moment, but for all my days. The image of Tara getting strangled, of getting dismembered with an axe by a dope fiend if it dared leave me, I grasped for it back. I thought of killing myself, of digging a grave right back into the garden and then laying there with a gun and putting myself down. That might pay penance to some gods who were punishing me for killing Brett. But this seemed too easy. Something was left for me, if nothing else, to suffer for my sins. I scraped up cash where I could to smoke some rocks. No longer did I smoke in Russell's basement, but inside my own living room. The train whistle shot through my head with each inhale and my body tingled electric. But then the paranoia hit. People were outside my door, and I was sure of it. And it made me peep out the window shades at imaginary surveillance vehicles. Other times, I was too scared to look and had to hide from the demons in my bathroom, huddled up next to the toilet, chewing on my fingernails, waiting for them to get me. That's where I was hiding the day they did come. I heard the front door open. I pulled my legs into my body, wrapped up into a ball, and shivered against the cold ceramic toilet. Footsteps and whispers followed. Where is he? He has to be here. It's dark, like a light. It was the voice of not one but two demon women walking about the house, opening up each door, searching each room. The bathroom was last. I found him. I heard them but wouldn't look, just kept my head wrapped up in my arms, waiting for the illusion to fade. They weren't going anywhere, and I finally opened my eyes and looked up at the tall woman looming over me. She had long, sweeping hair like a blonde weeping willow. My crack-possessed spirit trembled. It was Stacy. Years older, years stronger, but I could tell it was Stacy from NA. But she was not alone. Next to her was a girl I used to know back when her skin was baby smooth. I knew her from the days when she rode on my shoulders, when she slept by my side after reading Dr. Seuss to me out loud. She used to look up at me in the crowd in the middle of a soccer game, tie score, and wanted to know I was watching. My baby stood there before me, her skin weathered but her resolve stronger than ever. In one of her hands she held a syringe, but the other arm was just a stub. An inch above where her elbow used to be was the round knob of her amputated arm. She seemed like a store mannequin, a female bust, but completely unbreakable. She'd grown into the aged redwood with wisdom I had always dreamed she'd be. Each cell in her body moved steadfast and sturdy. She was not only alive, but she was clean. "Sweet pea," I whispered. "Your arm," she commanded. I cocked my head in confusion, not sure what she meant. "Your arm," she repeated, and I straightened my elbow.
Her sponsor, Stacy, wrapped her cold fingers around my wrist, and Tara aimed the tip of the needle into my blue vein. The syringe was cocked and loaded. Fentanyl. Say goodbye. Sweet pea, I whispered again. I felt the snakebite puncture my veins. The metallic burn stung, but it felt so true. And my veins filled with the thick venom of all her anger and rage. The last thing I saw were her kaleidoscope eyes before my lungs slowed and my vision went black. My overdosed body would never make it to the hospital, not even for a dump and run. Without that, I was certain to die. But my baby girl was clean. My baby girl was clean. You've been listening to Part 3 and the conclusion to Garden of Fiends by Mark Matthews. For Parts 1 and 2, just go back 2 weeks. You can't miss them. Mark Matthews is a graduate of the University of Michigan and a licensed professional counselor who has worked in behavioral health for over 20 years. He is the author of On the Lips of Children, All Smoke Rises, and Milk Blood, as well as the editor of Lullabies for Suffering and Garden of Fiends. In June 2021, he was nominated for a Shirley Jackson Award. His newest work, The Hobgoblin of Little Minds, was published in January 2021. Reach him at Wicked Run Press, all one word, Wicked Run Press, @gmail.com. If you enjoyed what you've heard on today's program, please take a moment to stop by our iTunes page or wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts and leave us a 5-star review and a kind word. It makes a huge difference and would mean a lot to me. If you'd like to hear more lengthy tales, be sure to take a look at my audiobooks, available now on audible.com. If you'd like to hear a premium, ad-free edition of tonight's and all our other episodes, visit simplyscarypodcast.com today and click the Patrons link in the menu at the top of the screen. You'll find yourself at chillingtalesfordarknights.com, where you can become a patron for as little as $5 per month and get access to our entire audio archive dating back to 2012, including past episodes of this program, all of our other shows, and hundreds of standalone releases, all of them ad-free and available to download or stream. If you happen to use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube, you can follow and subscribe to Chilling Tales for Dark Nights there, where you'll get all of our latest updates and new releases and have the chance to interact with us each and every week. You'll find me personally on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. Until next week, listener, when we meet up once again atop the horror hill for yet another dance with darkness, I bid you good night. Sleep tight, listener, and whatever you do, if you hear scratching at your door, don't open it. The darkness may have found you, but it's up to you to let it in. You've been listening to Horror Hill, a production of Chilling Entertainment and the creative team at Chilling Tales for Dark Nights, as well as a proud member of the Simply Scary Podcast Network. Visit simplyscarypodcast.com today to learn more about our network and our other amazing storytelling programs. Tonight's program was hosted and its featured stories performed by yours truly, Jason Hill, unless otherwise noted. Selected stories have been adapted with the kind permission of their respective authors. Sound design, original music, and final mixing and mastering provided by Felipe Ojeda under the guidance of executive producer and director Craig Groshek. The program's logo was created by Craig Groshek, and this week's artwork provided by Omega Black, unless otherwise noted. Got a scary tale of your own that you'd like performed? I take submissions. Email it to me today at horrorhill@simplyscarypodcast.com to have your terrifying tome considered for production in a future episode of the show. If you enjoyed what you've heard on tonight's program and are joining us on your favorite podcast app, subscribe to us to be sure you never miss an episode, and leave us a 5-star review and a comment. Your feedback means a lot to me. You can also follow Chilling Tales for Dark Nights and Horror Hill on Facebook to connect anytime and get the latest updates. If you're listening on the Chilling Tales for Dark Nights YouTube channel, do us a favor and hit the subscribe button and the bell notification icon to get more spooky tales from me and the crew, and another episode of this program each and every week. And don't forget to hit that thumbs up button to tell us how we're doing, and leave a kind word or a request. If you can never get enough spooky stories and can't wait until next week for more, and haven't already, be sure to check out Chilling Tales for Dark Nights on YouTube for hundreds of free audio horror stories, including more performances from yours truly, and consider supporting us by becoming a patron at chillingtalesfordarknights.com. In addition to helping us out, you'll get exclusive access to our audio archive and ad-free downloads of all your favorite stories, including those you've heard on this program. As for me, I'll be back next week with more frightening fiction to haunt your dreams. Until next time, I'm Jason Hill, and you've been listening to the Horror Hill Podcast. Good evening, and sweet dreams.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.